Hello everyone, welcome to Phil Tank, and today we're going to talk about the Golem factory, the the pain mill, the pain factory, as I believe Charles Carroll calls it sometimes. However, before we go into dive into this, I want to give a quick, short disclaimer that um, if you haven't noticed, I try to be a net positive with those things, with these little videos, with this little video side project that I'm doing. I'm currently not getting a lot of views. I don't worry about it. It's just something I do out of fun. I started doing out of fun. But I'm trying to be a positive with this. I did my first video on nutrition and on what things to avoid, like endocrine disruptors. I like geopolitics. I like history, like politics, and I think there's tons of people out there already talking about nutrition and healthy lifestyle and getting sunlight and working out, which is all beautiful and it's good things. But not a lot of people talking about, well, the underlying spiritual warfare and the pain factory, the system that we live under. But by no means I want to sound demoralizing, because I mentioned this in my last video that there are people out there putting out content that is sort of, I don't want to name any names. I don't even know any. I don't even know nobody. Um, but there's voices out there that put out things that is, I don't know if they're doing it willingly. Certainly there are some people that are being sponsored to do that, but there are people out there that put a content out which is looks like self-improvement content or like base to red pilled content, but it's really just demoralizing you. I mean, we all know that things are fucked up and you can't get a house and all this and that. So by no means I want to sound demoralizing here or sound like I am, sound helpless or sound like it's all hopeless. And in the end, God will always win, and there is nothing that mankind can do about this. There's a quote from Aldous Huxley that I wrote down. Not a huge fan of Huxley. I think he was a disgusting fucking freak, and so was his brother Julian Huxley. I read Brave New World and his weird little mescaline essay, Doors of Perception, Heaven and Hell. But I still think that this is a great quote. We have to separate the man from the quote. Um, it goes, no man can concentrate his attention upon evil or even upon the idea of evil and not remain unaffected. To be more against the devil than for God is exceedingly dangerous. Every crusader is apt to go mad. He is haunted by the wickedness he attributes to his enemies. It becomes in some sort part of him. So just leave it at that. Don't be fixated more on evil, and we see this everywhere right now. You know, be mad at man, be mad at white people, be mad at black people, be mad at them, and they're suck, and they're freaks, and they're inhuman, and they're evil, and they're whatever, Nazis, whatever that even means. So don't do that. There's plenty of good people out there. Go outside, take a walk outside, and you will notice that the people out there are good people, because who's not against you is for you. You know, if there's not a clear indicator that somebody is against you, somebody wants to fuck you up, they're probably a good person and wish you no harm. However, but let's get into the creative. Enough positivity. Let's get into the creation of Hara and Terra, a military operation. I wrote an essay that I haven't published. Check out my Substack. I recently started being active on there too. I will put the link in the description or whatever it is. I originally wanted to call it the import of Hora and Terra, a military operation. But I now decided to call it the creation of Hora and Terra. Maybe I will get into a little bit later in the recording into why I make the distinction. However, I already sort of mentioned in the beginning in this 5 minute disclaimer, this public service announcement, that we live under a system that is amplifying all negativity, everything negative and bad, and that is actively diminishing all good, positive, and all discipline in first place. It's a war on discipline. You know, it's a war. It's all about sacrificing long-term fulfillment for short-term pleasures. Because, and I also mentioned this in my last video, I believe, or the one before that, short-term pleasures make money for certain actors. So, but I wanted to talk about, or trying to talk about, a little bit of a bigger picture. But how much of a big picture can you get with the media nowadays and our isolated lives and our cities and towns? But I think the most obvious thing, there's a lot of war drums out there going on, and it's always the same justification or the same reasoning. It's either weapons of mass destruction, whatever those are. It's nuclear, it's chemical, it's biological. It's this new term that got invented not so long ago called narco-terrorism. We never really got a definition on what the flip narco-terrorism is. But there were a lot of life leak type videos posted by the White House on blowing up cigar boats in the justification of narco-terrorism. I wanted to go into into the things that almost everybody's talking about now in this sphere, or not only now, but let's take like some more current examples of war and or wars and what they changed for the better. Let's take, like, for example, Libya. After they sodomized Muammar al-Gaddafi to death with a bayonet, we got slave markets now in Tripoli, the capital of Libya. There's Russian and Turkish and Arab mercenaries in Libya, all with different goals, financing and arming different factions. It's chaos and mayhem compared to what the country was before that. We had Afghanistan, which lasted 20 years and cost, if I'm not wrong, $2.3 trillion. Killed a bunch of people, civilians, of course, US soldiers, also a bunch of European soldiers, because there's this thing that the USA did after 9/11. They called it burden sharing. And it basically means we make our problem your problem. So I talked about this also in one of the most recent videos, that Europe is basically a colony of the US. Still, I think this is kind of coming to an end with the movement towards a more multipolar world. But the thing is that Europe is like basically 5 steps behind everyone else because of the whole green woke policies, and because it made itself so dependent of the USA. But it is still a colony of the US, and the purpose that a colony serves is the extraction of capital, whether it's for taxes or tariffs or whatever. The extraction of materials, gold, oil, whatever, or human resources, like sending German and Danish and Italian young men to Afghanistan because 9/11, which was an insurance job, happened in the US. But however, 20 years Afghanistan to deliver school books to Afghan girls. And the end result of that is Afghan girls can't leave their houses now because the Taliban took over now, only that they got US equipment now. We have Iraq, of course, where in 2003 the Brits and the US bombed the Iraqi National Museum, destroying those artifacts, the Baghdad batteries. I don't know if anyone heard of them. They were like receptacles, and nobody knew what they were. And there was like this ancient civilization, this lost civilization theories. There were like some sort of batteries because there was like copper wiring in those vases basically. And however, we will never find out because those artifacts were destroyed. We got Ukraine, of course, where the Russian Orthodox Church is being closed down, and they basically do the same things to the priests that the Bolsheviks did in the Russian Revolution. And of course, we got now Iran, the newest example, where two nations, I'm talking about the US and Israel, two nations with the most sophisticated weapons systems that they always brag about. I remember those videos from Iraq over 20 years ago, where they show those TV guided missiles flying down chimneys and blowing the houses up, and flying into like windows of Soviet Kamaz trucks that had the window cracked open a little bit, and those TV guided missiles were flying into the window, driver's side window of this truck, blowing it up. They can literally fire a missile inside your asshole from 4,000 miles away. Yet, well, we accidentally bombed the girls' school, killing 170 plus little girls. I don't know what kind of ritual that was on the first or the second day of the war. Well, but you know, the naval base was right next to the school. The school was right next to the naval base. You can literally fire a missile. I don't even want to go down there. I don't think it was accidental. I think it was some sort of ritual. Or at least a message. But what's the difference between those, right? The AI, the Peter Thiel AI made a mistake, and it couldn't click all the check boxes with a fire hydrant on. That's why somebody wasn't able to click all the captchas with the fire hydrant on. That's why it accidentally flew into the school, killing those girls. Yeah, as if it's not about the destruction of innocence. However, my point of this rant is, it's nothing outlandish. It's like that war never brings positivity or positive change. Even those big wars that everybody's constantly talking about. But that's not the goal of war. It's not something uranium or chemical or narco, whatever it is. The goal of every single war, and this is the case for over 5,000 years now. Hold on, listen. The goal of every single war is the destruction of history. It is the destruction of culture and history. That's why it's always ancient sites being bombed. When the bombs go off, they always go off in a school, or at a church, or at some ancient site, or at a museum. The goal of war, that doesn't matter who the bad guy is that we are fighting. The goal of every war is the destruction of history. And then after that, to replace this history with a fake, synthetic version of history. I think it's a Napoleon quote. Was it a Napoleon quote? I don't know. It's probably just something that somebody once attributed to Napoleon. That history is written by the winners. I know history is a lie agreed upon by the winners. I believe this was the Napoleon quote. But I think Edward Bernays in his book Propaganda put it the best. It's that history is written by the news agencies. History is written by the news agencies. So whoever is the bad guy, whoever we are fighting, whatever the reasons are, just turn on the TV. They're gonna tell you. They're gonna tell you. That's the great thing. You don't even have to think for yourself. They're gonna tell you. The goal of every single war is the destruction of your history. And it's known for the people in control that violence always causes more violence. that violence always causes more violence. And it's violence directed against you. You just you just sit in your house trying to consume as much media as you possibly can. The war doesn't bother you, right? The dead girls in Iran, or the balkanization of Libya. But it actually does. This is why I call it the creation of horror and terror, or this is why I wanted to call it in the beginning the import of horror and terror, a military operation. It's because we're importing the violence that we export in the form of cluster bombs that have been used to kill Russian civilians in eastern Ukraine. We always import that violence also back in the form of the people whose water supply and whose schools we just destroyed. So we just export those missiles to, quote unquote, blow the Middle East back into the Stone Age. And then we take those Stone Age people and we then place them in our metropolitan city centers and hotels. Those people that can't stand us because our government destroyed their water supply and bombed their school and killed their parents. The friendly knife-wielding doctor and engineer in your neighborhood is a direct result from the violence that we exported. He's a form of violence against you that has been imported after your taxpayer money exported a bunch of violence in form of laser-guided munitions costing $1 million a piece, a unit. And this plays into the whole destruction of your history, of national identity, of borders, of nation states. Hey, after the 30-year-old war, after the end of the 30-year-old war in 1648, they decided that religious freedom and a national identity and the respect of borders of other countries is basically the most vital thing in the cooperation and existence between different nation states. I guess that concept is getting old after almost 500 years, right? It's about the destruction of history and to substitute that history with a synthetic version of history. And we see this, I think Ukraine is beautiful. Beautiful is a pretty morbid word in this case. But it's a great example for how history was rewritten or is being rewritten in real time. Not only that, culture. West Ukrainians making TikTok videos of themselves, burning Dostoevsky or Tolstoy because, Russia is bad. Well, I was never on board with what the US did in Libya or Afghanistan, but you won't find me burning, I don't know, Shakespeare or Bukowski. But this is how you become a golem. This is how you become a golem. Fed by hatred. Just an errand boy for your masters. This leads me to my next point, that people are cheerleading their oppressors and they're not even realizing it. All those people, we need to turn Iran into a parking lot. We need to turn the sand in Iran into glass. They're cheerleading for the same people that are responsible for their lack of financial independence. They're cheerleading the people poisoning them with goy slop. They're cheerleading the people that hate them, that see them running around or their children running around and all they see is people trespassing their private property. Well, we don't need more humans. We don't need more people. In fact, we need to get rid of them because they're all trespassing on my private property. This land is owned by the bank. They're trespassing my land. Disgusting fucking freaks. Directing your hatred against other people, against their culture, burning books. I mean, of course, there are books that are straight evil and satanic. I mean, it's a, I'm not for book burning. I'm just saying, after after who in the 30s started burning books, it's like, oh, burning books is evil. I think it is in most cases, but there are books out there that are straight up trash. There are books out there they probably should be burned. Um, but going back to the actual real life example, like burning the classics, if you have to burn books that are considered classics all around the world, or you have to rename streets because they are named after poets that come from a country that you don't like anymore, or you have to teach an inverted version of history in school, who really freed Auschwitz and whatever. If you have to change all those things, you're a golem. Congratulations, you become a golem, fed by hatred, contempt, and ultimately self-doubt, not having your own history, your own past, your own cultural background to rely on. That gives you not having a faith that gives you guidance in this world. Just simply repeating, regurgitating half-digested catchphrases that you heard somewhere often enough that they have been imprinted on your brain, that they now have become your slogan. Unable to create, not even able to create an own thought, just repeating opinions that you picked up somewhere. Synthetic history and the destruction of standard of living. Dr. John Coleman called groups of people in his book Committee of the 300 psychological shock groups. There are groups to weaken the fabric of society. Now, this could be like the radical feminist movement. It could be the alphabet people, the LGBT whatever people, but it also could be whatever group that is out there spreading a poisonous, unnatural, inhuman agenda and propaganda to, or even just to stir up fake arguments. I mean, we see this online a lot. I mean, I don't really see it because I barely have a social media. But yeah, you can call them psychological shock groups. You can call them golems. It's all about demoralization in this world, under this system and the destruction of history. A huge part in the demoralization also plays the hyper-sex world that we live in. Pornography, degenerate stuff like OnlyFans, like the time that we live on now. It really accelerated in the past decade, that the lowest degeneracy will be elevated to something almost divine, like embrace it, be proud of it. We mentioned the sacrifice of long-term fulfillment for short-term pleasure, but this is not even about that. This is about straight up degeneration of degenerating and humiliating people. Now, rape has been used for thousands of years in war to break the spirit of the civilian population and to give the man in the population a extra feeling of helplessness and desperation. Now, thanks to the modern world and high-speed internet, once again, I'm not shitting on the modern world, not going full Ted Kaczynski. Of course, you can use the internet for good things. You can use it to make money. You can start your own business. You can try to spread helpful information. But it's a tool like everything else. And I made this example already. You can use a hammer for something good. You can build a house with a hammer. or whatever, but you can also bash somebody's face with it. And so I'm not going from one extreme into the other, but it's a fact that thanks to the internet, you don't even need to get raped now. You can just get molested in the comfort of your own four walls. Are you a man if you can't control your appetite? Why are we being treated like cattle? There's this quote. It's from Black's Dictionary, and I try to end it with this and try to end on a positive note. You can make the rest up for yourself, as always. A monster. The quote is longer, but this is the only thing that I really memorized from it. A monster. The definition of a monster. A monster is a human being by birth, but it resembles some form of lower animal. This is what a monster is. It's a human being by birth, but ultimately it gets turned into a golem. Now, to finish this on a positive note, I think that every monster, or almost, I think almost every monster has the chance to make a transition back into a human. Like, I didn't live an ideal life. I still don't live an ideal life. I am still lazy, sometimes anxious, not sure about myself and my decisions, doubtful. And I try to get rid of this. I ask God for forgiveness for these traits every day. I try to make the next day better. But I think with discipline and positivity, not naive positivity, but positivity like I have to pull myself up by the bootstraps and I have to do this. Everybody, almost every monster can make a transition back into a human. It's not easy. You will fail. But eventually, if you stay on it, you will succeed. So, I hope I didn't sound mad. These were some weird topics. I mean, I could have fleshed out every single of them, but we will be still sitting here for 30 minutes. I wanted to make the videos shorter. I wanted to do like 15-20 minute things, but I just looked at the timer and it seems like I'm not able to keep it under 30 minutes. But however, God give us patience and hope in these uncertain times. And God bless everyone.